Hello there guys and welcome back to the channel. Right, so we do have information about Shocker and Sandman this time around, coming at a timely manner, and there are very good news in regards of Shocker and Sandman, and then some other things that I would like to talk about as well. But let's just get through this post. Shocker entered the contest aimed at battlegrounds and war. Well, there hasn't been much war happening since he came out, but he definitely hasn't made a very big impact in battlegrounds. He's not like Kate that you see in like every top tier deck. Armed with a massive heavy attack and the ability to never crit, he was intended to be able to thrive in a variety of matchups. At the moment, Shocker only reached his potential versus certain mutant targets, and he falls short outside of that. And that's true. Not too many people use Shocker. For that reason, we have decided to give Shocker a tune-up. The goal of Shocker's tune-up is for his damage to be stronger and more viable over a wider variety of defenders in battlegrounds. On top of damage, we will be looking at making some quality of life improvements in his kit. That sounds quite good, I'm not gonna lie. Because, yeah, I think if Shocker had more damage, then his rotation loops would be shorter and he could potentially be more popular. That's quite as simple as. The way he just isn't quite up there with the best options. But in between, he's like level 1, level 2 rotation, where you retain your power, so it comes off similar as if you just need to use like a level 2, and then can go in for like a massive heavy attack. That has a lot of value in it. The problem is that it just isn't quite quick enough to ramp him to the whole damage needed. And then when you need to finish off, that, tends to take quite a bit of time. Additionally, we will be adding a stack limit of 1 to cover the synergy with Spider-Man symbiote. The synergy is more powerful than we had intended, and we want it to remain valuable, but not as game-changing. Honestly, don't really care too much about that. So they're basically nerfing one of his synergies that, I personally never even really heard about. Now I'm kind of curious to test it out, but I really don't think, I'm too fussed over that. Overall, definitely great, giving Shocker more damage, some quality of life improvements, good stuff right there. Overall, we think that Shocker will be stronger than ever and be more capable of dealing with wider range of matchup in nodes. We want him to be the most fearsome. Good. Absolutely. I quite like Shocker. I just don't think he's quite good enough in a sense. And in my opinion, yeah, he's one of the bottom 3-4 champions released this year. So here we are, and him getting a tune-up, I think is perfect. Now, Sandman is a champion I really do like, and the problem is his damage, yeah. That his damage in short to medium fights. In long fights, he can put up decent numbers. Sandman arrived with the tools to handle most game modes, scaling for long fights, utility in tough Mystic matchups, and versatile loop options. We're happy to see that he's being used across the game modes and matchups, especially the most recent Gladiator Circuit node combo featuring Regeneration. Now, this is something I kind of disagree with, because he really isn't being used much. Like, he's not a chase champion, not too many people have ranked him up, not that many people really care about him, and yeah, in the previous Gladiator Circuit, you kind of utilized just one aspect of his, entire kit, which is effective Petrify application. For the rest of the game modes, I have barely seen a guy. So I don't think it's something they should be happy with. One trend we're seeing with Sandman is a large variance in performance between matchups that allow him to safely use his Special 3, good, compared to that require or encourage his Special 1 and Special 2 lower than target. This is largely due to his burst damage scaling best with debuff count instead of attack rating to bolster damage access within Sandman's more utility-focused loops. We're exploring a change for his bursts of physical damage that would shift their scaling from primarily relying on debuff count to scaling of modified attack, something all his loops can access through his Unstable Fury and heavy attack proficiencies. While we want to increase the impact of attack and lower the impact of debuff count in order to lessen the damage gap between Special 3 and Special 1 or Special 2 loops. We still want to preserve the identity of his Special 3 loop being the largest source of damage and his other loops holding more utility. Now that kind of makes sense, and that is also a big factor, because if you want to use Sandman, you will primarily want to do it because of his utility. pretty much never his damage. You will mainly want those deaccelerates or petrifies and, suppression debuffs and all that other stuff. And whilst in quote-unquote ideal situations, yeah, I can go for level 3 loop. But for any matchup like that, you'd pretty much always rather use somebody else. Because if you need to go to level 3 to access damage, that's by far not the most effective way to deliver damage as basic rule of thumb. And whilst I think it's fair enough that, majority or the highest damage output can potentially be tied to a special 3 loop, if it is kept that way, I think that, it's just going to be a design failure because people just will not want to do it. And if his special 1, special 2 loops get enough damage, I think that is the thing that can make him like a relevant champion. It's quite as simple as. Because again, if you're going to want to use Sandman, in most cases it will be because of his deaccelerates and large amount of debuffs and petrifies. And if you don't have enough damage with that, it's kind of like Mangog in a sense. Mangog has a bunch of utility and awesome immunities on his level 1, but if you use level 1, his damage is absolutely abysmal. You can only get a decent level of damage by spamming your level 2s with Mangog and nothing else. And everything, other than that immediately has to go poof. And I do hope that they push him up to a solid enough damage output in short to medium fights where he can, actually be competitive. Because as of right now, the only reason we kind of like ever saw Sandman being mentioned was the regeneration reversal. And Sandman's a very cool character. I really want Sandman to be good. Like, let me make that clear. Science is my favorite class, and I want every science to be good, but especially Sandman because I love his immunities. I love the tons and tons of debuffs. I love that potent petrify. I just wish he was viable for shorter form content. As always, we will be closely monitoring feedback about this trade-off during upcoming beta, so we can ensure he lands in a spot that summoners find both powerful and satisfying. Well, I hope they do that. But since both of the champions are getting changes, we are getting no new buffs, and there is a very good thread on Kabam forums now, yet again, about the buff program. And it might be best to talk about this yet again in like a standalone video, but I do want to tack it on here at end as well as like a bit of a add-on. Because number one, I don't really like what Kabam has changed in the descriptions about these tune-ups, because they used to list specific things that they are going to change. Like when, I don't know, Baron Zemo tune-up came in, they said we're gonna, change that armor up to a passive, we're gonna put a Fury Cap. We knew what is going to happen. Or when they said we're gonna tune, who else did they tune? Gore. We're gonna increase his shadow magic buffs and stuff like that. Now they give us like very, very little information, and I still have no idea exactly, for instance, what they're doing with Shocker, how they're changing his damage. Is it that you gain more damage per charge, or you gain charges quicker in some way? All of those details are like quite important, so I do not like that these are kind of getting more and more abstract. While they explain relatively well the thought process, they have completely abandoned the part where they give us like at least vague hints or guides properly and how they are going to actually reach that. So like implication here with Sandman is that, that his bonus from the amount of damage, from the amount of debuffs on his burst of damage is going to be reduced, but then that same thing is going to be increased on based on, like, again, it's not entirely clear exactly what they're going to be doing to these champions. I don't quite like that change, but more than everything else that I do want to talk is that buff program is dead, and Kabam has killed it effectively. And this post is, I think, about as good as you can see. Here is a player quoting the end summary from each of the rebalancing announcements here. So let's not forget that rebalancing already came at a time when champion buffs basically reduced drastically. But now we have gone to the point where the buffs are basically non-existent. And of course, Kabam is not going to openly come and say that, they don't care about buffing any champions anymore, or that they explicitly change something in their priorities, but they obviously have, because here we can see that Hulkling and Wiccan, with Hulkling no changes, Wiccan only needing small one, we had time to invest in value update, Iron Man Infinity War. Gore and Valkyrie. Like last month, we had enough time to pair Gore's changes with another small value update to America Chavez. Gallon and Quicksilver. Neither needed a change. We're going to be working giving Hulk Classic a brand new kit. Titania and iDoom. Neither needed a change. Giving a full-on brand new kit to Classic Spidey. Now we have Spidey Supreme and Spot. Neither needed a change. They are working on a new kit to Iceman. A two-man Shuri. Tune-ups for both characters. And sadly no time for change anyone else. Mantis and Jessica Jones. Mantis tune-up, which was, by the way, 2 lines changed. Like, if you can tell me that Mantis tune-up was anything remotely close to giving a character a full brand new ability kit, it's lies. There were 2 lines changed with Mantis, and sadly no time. But again, even here, when a Mantis got, let's say, the tiniest of tune-ups, and then they say they have no time for anyone else. But here we had champions that got a tune-up. Like here, like last month, we had enough time to pair Gore's changes with a value update to America Chavez. Why we didn't get another update with Mantis then? Because Mantis had smaller changes than Gore. And similar thing here. With small changes to Wiccan, Iron Man Infinity War got a buff. With let's say, much bigger changes to Gore, Chavez got an update. And now we already here at this point moved where Mantis got the smallest update of them all, and they still use that to say, sadly, no time left for another champion. Now we have Zemo and Absman. Sadly, no time left for anyone else. Future Ant-Man and Cassie Lang. Sadly, no time left for anyone else. Will Vision and Kate Bishop. Sadly, no time for left anyone else. Sandman and Shocker. No time for anyone else. So, again, if at the beginning of this balancing process, they still changed and buffed champion, even if there was like some sort of tune-up. So the relationship between new champion balancing and old champion rework is quite apparent, suggesting otherwise is to be disingenuous. Now, been 6 months since any work was planned for a single older champion. 3 older champion reworks in the last 9 months, and 6 in the last 12 months. So in the last 9 months, we have gotten 3 reworks, and there's going to be no reworks in like upcoming X amount of months. The buff program isn't going to be officially cancelled, and maybe 2 or 3 times a year, maybe we'll get a buff when there's a bit of spare time, but as an active program, it is done. It's completely. And my personal thought process that I mentioned a couple times before as well is, and I feel like it's not necessarily the balancing program that took away the buffs as much as it is the relics that have quite a lot to do with it as well. Because Bob Mike's comments definitely implied that relics occupy the same design space as champions and new champion design, and that is the same space occupied by people who do these tune-ups. And it is quite obvious that as soon as relics kind of became a thing, buff program kind of started going away. Even before the balancing kind of officially became something. So, but I think that, yeah, buff program has been effectively dismissed or put at the very bottom of their priorities, which community hates because of relics and in part balancing. But I do think relics have a lot to do with the fact that there are no buffs either. Because again, you know, when a new thing appears and something goes away and it's being done by the same people, you can kind of figure out why that stuff happened. Is working. I would happily, well, it's quite a good thread here. If you guys want, I'll leave a link to it in the video description. You guys can have a read. I'll leave a link to both of these posts. But yeah, I mean, like, I'm happy that Shocker is getting a buff, and I'm happy that Sandman is getting a buff. Not quite happy that they're giving us less details than they used to before about these buffs. I'm definitely not happy that we're just getting no buffs at all. Like, yesterday we got an update, and it meant nothing. yesterday was like one of the first updates in a really long time when I just didn't care. For more than a year or for the 2-3 years, I was looking forward to every single update day. Not only to look for the new bugs and stuff, but primarily to compare, the old champions and the buff champions and see what's new and stuff like that. And yesterday, the game updated. I couldn't care less. Just really didn't. So let me know what you guys think about it, and I'm gonna catch you guys soon. Bye. Hello there guys, and welcome back to the channel. So we have all the information